Hello, I am Sailor Phantom, and I'm going to talk about Chrono Cross, or more specifically Surge, and his effect on the Chrono Trigger Chrono Cross timeline. Now, if you've never played Chrono Cross, none of this will make any sense, so I recommend playing the game first before watching this video, though it probably still won't make complete sense. It's a very complex story, which is exactly why I'm making this! To try and clear up one of the many confusing plot threads that has been plaguing my mind since first playing it years ago. Also, major spoilers ahead for both games. Now let's do this! So by playing the game several times and with research you can figure out most of the story and why it is how it is. But it's still crazy and complex and there are still things left unanswered. One of which is Surge. And why in the world did he have to die to keep the timeline safe? Yeah, remember that? He's blamed for ruining the timeline that the Trigger Gang saved. Yes, I'm calling them the Trigger Gang. There's nothing else you can do about it. Ha. But what we're never told is why. What exactly did he do? Well, I think I figured it out. Kinda. First, a big glaring problem on Surge somehow racing the saved timeline. How could he have done it? He wasn't even born until after the events of Trigger were completed. So how could Surge be to blame, we ask? Indirectly! Firstly, according to the game, Lucca managed to make incomplete time eggs and gave one to Kid before 1015 AD when she was kidnapped by Lynx, thus leaving the potential to interfere with the timeline. Eggs. Note the plural there. Now it's possible that there is only one working time egg and the rest got caught in the fire, in which case this theory still holds true, because Kid has a time egg. Now we never see heads or tails of Kid in Homeworld, and there could be a dozen reasons why, but that's for another theory. Or for just me to talk about later, which I will. The most probable scenario is that Dalton got a hold of the time egg from Kid and used it to go back when they were weaker and defeat the Trigger Gang, thus preventing them from saving the timeline, and not realizing the consequences. Now you're probably asking, how does this involve Surge? I'll tell you, by comparing Homeworld Arnie to Another World Arnie. In this village alone we see the effect Surge has on people around him, but mainly with these three. In Surge's Arnie, Homeworld, we see all three are quite happy. I don't care what she says, she's a lot happier here than Another Arnie. So let's start with Poet Girl, as in the game it's obvious of Surge's effect on her. In Homeworld Arnie, this girl actively pursues her love of poetry, even if it's not amazing. You're given the option to either tell her it's good or bad, which in turn either boosts her confidence or not. Either way, she's still thankful to Surge. She is thankful to Surge. Now, in comparison to Another Arnie where Surge is dead, the girl has absolutely no interest in poetry. Why? Because Surge was never there to encourage her. One person really can make a huge difference. Just look at It's a Wonderful Life. Now I'm sure that's not nearly enough to convince you. So let's look at the fisherman in Homeworld outside of Radius's hut. He has a huge sawfish, and he jokes about it coming from the Dragon King Palace because of its size. And you have a choice to either agree with him or kind of laugh it off. He's happy from either response and admits it's unlikely. His son tells Surge it came from down south, near El Nido Triangle, where very few fishermen go. So he seems to really enjoy fishing and is brave enough to go down there. While in Another World he has no giant fish and complaining about not having a challenge. And if you talk to his son, he mentions El Nido Triangle again and how none of the grown-ups go down there, which includes his dad. So in Homeworld, Surge may have encouraged him to explore, thus expanding his fishing areas. Now moving on to our last guy, whom I shall dub Fisher Dad in the basement. He is the biggest clue into Surge's influence. When Surge talks to him, he mentions his daughter, his wife, and how life goes on through the generations. Then you look at the wall and he says this: 10 years. A very important number in this game, because that's when the world split in two, or more depending upon how you look at the Radical Dreamers cameo in Chronopolis. Anywho, Surge's death or survival affected Chronopolis, causing it to either continue with Surge dead or cease to exist with Surge alive. Now back to Fisher Dad. In Surge's homeworld, he thrived as a fisherman. Why? Because of Fate, a computer from Chronopolis that did not exist and was unable to guide him to a different path. But in another world, Surge is dead, Chronopolis and Fate computer functions, thus it is able to guide people's lives. Fate then told Fisher Dad not to become a fisherman, like his father before him, but chose a different path. Why choose a different path, and what was that path? I'm not sure, but I certainly hope it wasn't to start in a cult, even if we do get an amusing character out of it. All we do know is that he couldn't do it, and he gave it up right there and then. This is most likely due to Fate telling him, or guiding him, he couldn't do it. And we see people relying on Fate records in Arnie as a daily routine, almost to a kind of scary degree when you think about it. Now in-game it is stated that Fate was made to keep the people of El Nido Archipelago from interfering with Chrono in the game, since El Nido did not exist in the original timeline, due to it being created by Balthazar to save Scala, a rather complex plan that surprisingly worked out. I guess that's what you get from the guy who went crazy in the original timeline and copied his consciousness into a robot do. Now, ignoring the obvious paradox of Surge making Fate cease to exist, and in turn Chronopolis and finally El Nido, let's just accept the fact that the place exists, despite it all, and the timeline returned to its original destroyed by Lavos form. So how did Surge cause all this? He left a chain reaction that led to people to become fishermen and quite probably leave El Nido Archipelago. Most likely they were either going to expand their fishing grounds, trade, or sell. Probably in Peoria or Chorus. Medina is a possibility, but a little less likely considering their dislike for the demi-humans. I don't think it'd be much different for the Mystics. Now, from what we're told in Cross and in the ending of Chrono Trigger PlayStation and DS versions, Guardia Kingdom is no more. So trade with them is even less likely. Now back to Luca's time ache that Kid has. In one way or another, Kid left the mainland and left for El Nido, probably by sailing with a willing fisherman perhaps, but before leaving she was caught as a member of the Radical Dreamers thieves. Then both Kid and this mysterious object were then brought to Dalton, who may have been in high authority in Peoria, and he may have recognized it as Gaspar's invention. Dalton then seized the opportunity and used the time ache to stop Chrono and the gang at some point, thus preventing them from also defeating Lavos. Another possibility is that during Kid's arrest, someone accidentally used it, then went back in time during the events of Chrono Trigger, unknowingly preventing Chrono and the gang from defeating Lavos. It could be as simple as a lost person distracting Chrono from meeting Marle the day of the fair, or asking Chrono or even Marle for help. Thus, Marle never gets on the telepod and the gates are never created. So to recap, the chain of events set by Surge's encouragement of his fellow villagers creates more fishermen, going out of El Nido, interfering with events involving Kid, activating the time ache either by accident or on purpose, going back in time to trigger, and in turn preventing Chrono and the others from defeating Lavos. In turn, Chronopolis was never founded, and the Fate computer was never created to control the people of El Nido. Yet Fate still exists and Chronopolis is in ruins, but that's, again, time travel is hard and paradox and whatnot. But I do have a mini theory on that. That point in which the world split in two is the only part that got affected, and everything else stayed the same, despite it all. So that is my theory on how it really was all Surge's fault, like the Chrono Kids say it is. Well, I hope you enjoyed my theory. Did you agree, or any other thoughts or theories of your own? I'd love to hear them. Until next time, I'm Sailor Phantom of Middle-earth, off to find adventure!